Hey everyone, today we have Girish Redekar on our show. Now, Girish is the co-founder of Sprinto, an automated enterprise-grade cybersecurity solution where he helps SaaS companies become security compliant so they can close enterprise deals faster. Now, Girish was previously the co-founder of RecruiterBox, a SaaS platform that helps companies stay on top of recruitment processes. After successfully scaling it to 8 figures, he exited the company in an all-cash deal. I'm really excited to dive into his journey today. So Girish, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Shaheen. Excited to be here.
Yeah, excited to have you. So Girish, we're going to jump right in. Talk to me about the founding story of Sprinto.
Funnily, the founding story of my current startup, Sprinto, began at my previous startup in some way. So I ran another B2B SaaS company, like you mentioned earlier, and it was during the course of running that company where we were trying to take the company a little bit more upmarket, and we started getting asked for these security questions, about, hey, are you SOC 2 compliant? Are you ISO compliant? Or take this few hundreds questions of security questionnaires and come answer them and come back to us. And we tried to kick this can down the road as much as possible. We didn't want to, it sounded like not something that an early stage or small SaaS company would do. My previous SaaS company was bootstrapped, by the way. And, this sounded like an expensive, time-taking affair. So we didn't want to do it for as long as possible. But there came a point where, it seemed like we cannot get any further without actually doing these things. And so we bit the bullet, tried to go through this thing to get ourselves SOC 2 compliant, hired a consultant. And I think about tens of thousands of dollars, and 6 months down the line, there was still no light at the end of the tunnel. And I wouldn't say that it was a very pleasant experience for us all. So it's not like we decided at that point that I'm going to work on this problem and build Sprinto, but the seeds of that thing remained. So, a few years later, when we exited Sprinto, and, and my co-founder from RecruiterBox, we decided to work together again when we were looking at starting our next startup. And we were looking at about half a dozen ideas about which one of them to pick. And this one had a personal story associated with it. So we were intimately aware of the kind of problems it causes, and we try to, of course, validate it with other founders that we could access. Right. But we did a lot of user interviews, but it became fairly clear fairly soon that this is a problem that was not just for us. It's a reasonably widespread problem. So that's roughly the founding story of Sprinto. That's when you decided, okay, this is something that's interesting enough that we should solve.
Yeah, that is very interesting. I didn't realize, because for us, like, all of our clients are basically SaaS companies, and a big chunk of them are trying to sell into enterprise. And I never really took that into consideration. So that is a real problem that pretty much any SaaS company faces. They have to be SOC 2 compliant. They have to have all these like check boxes to sell into enterprises.
Yeah. Yeah, it is. It is, at the time it started with enterprise, in the sense that you probably need this when you're doing 6-figure deals and larger. But we're seeing that the floor for this is reducing as we go. So if today it's become to a case that it's not just enterprise, but even for mid-market deals, you very commonly get asked for some of the other security questionnaires or compliances and so on and so forth. So it's becoming a lot more widespread than I originally optimistically believed it to be.
Fair enough. I guess that's always good to have. So Girish, one thing you said was, after you exited RecruiterBox, then you were thinking about the next company, right? It was like a very natural statement for you, like, okay, next, what's the next one? And I feel like when Sprinto is runs its course, and it's like, what's next? So where does that come from? Where does that drive come from to be an entrepreneur?
I don't know if I can answer that well, in the sense that I'm probably one of the most incidental entrepreneur out there. If you told me back in college, or right up to I did a couple of jobs before I actually started working on my first startup. If you told me at that point of time that, hey, you're going to be an entrepreneur, and I would have just laughed you off. Like, that was never a part of my career plans. Right. So it happened rather incidentally. I in fact believe that the reason we did Recruiterbox, my first startup, was that we were naive enough to not know what it really entailed. We just jumped into it head in, and only to figure out that it was a lot harder than we imagined in our wildest dreams. But somehow we stuck on it, and we sort of kept at it, and we were able to make a successful company out of it. Sprinto, I think the seeds of Sprinto in some way were there in while we were doing the previous company. So at its height, Recruiterbox was 3,000 customers strong. We were acquiring about 100 new customers a month. So, it was going pretty well. And in some way, it was an autopilot, which means that we have a bootstrapped company. It's a cash cow. We could retire easily with it. But one of the things that was that all the founders felt was that, hey, we have another startup in us, and while Recruiterbox is a great, comfortable startup, it isn't really making a difference to the industry that it is in, which is something that was our ambition. So it's a great business, but it wasn't really doing anything close to what our ambitions with it were. And we believe that we had something, we had another startup in us which could actually make a difference to the industry that it was going to be in. And that was one of the reasons why we decided to exit Recruiterbox. It would have been perfectly fine to keep running it. It would have been a low stress, peaceful journey. But I guess we caught the bug. We did that. We gave ourselves some time because we were kind of burnt out from that journey. But a year later, we were back in the saddle.
Yeah, I've heard that several times. Like caught the bug, right? Or what you're saying, you have another startup in you. It's really like interesting how you phrase these things. But I've heard that once founders exit, it's like 2 years max, like they're back in it. Because it's just, you just love the grind, the hustle of building something new, right? So solving new problems and stuff like that. So that's very interesting though, that you bootstrapped it to that level. That's very impressive actually, especially coming from, you didn't really know if you were going to be an entrepreneur. So what were some of the lessons that you learned along the way that if, you could go back, you would now skip those mistakes basically?
So yeah, maybe some context to that. The thing about me is I'm a programmer first, and I love building products. And one of the things that happens as a result of that, which is not necessarily good, is my first reaction as soon as I find something interesting, an opportunity to build something new, is I dive right in, and I'm happiest to write code and build it out and bring it out into the world. Right. So one of the biggest things that I had to teach myself during Recruiterbox, and we made a more disciplined effort at it at Sprinto, was to sort of spend more time in the problem space than the solution space. And what I mean by that is, I get very easily excited by, hey, let's build this out. This looks like a great idea, and I'm thinking a lot about ideas and the possibilities about it, and what it could become. And it's very easy to sort of wave your hand over the fact that, okay, is this really a problem? Is this a large enough problem? Do people care about it enough? Who in the company really cares about this? Does it bubble up to be the top 3 concerns, etc.? Because you're so excited by the idea. And one of the things that I had to sort of teach myself to do is, before you write a line of code. So this time we were thankfully not as naive as I was in my first startup. So we spent a lot of time actually interviewing real, SaaS founders, trying to figure out if the problem that we think exists does actually exist, in what form, what are its nuances, and we sort of had a much better handle on whether the problem itself exists. So for me personally, the biggest thing is about, I want to sort of spend more time in the problem space. I want to make sure that I understand the problem a lot more intimately, that I can actually explain the problem to the satisfaction of my customers, where they feel like, oh yes, you get it. And then I can sort of, allow myself to work on the solution space, which sort of then, once you know the problem intimately, you can actually go about solving it a lot better.
Yeah. No, fair points. I think it's a lesson that a lot of founders learn as well. It's just how important customer discovery really is in this whole process, and how you need to spend that much time. Is there a specific framework that you followed for your customer discovery?
So have you come across this book called The Mom Test?
No.
Right. So it's this very small book, and I was lucky to come across it at the right time. just when I was trying to do some of these customer discovery and customer interviews. It's a very small book. It's actually written from a context of an engineer who has tried to build many products and then wondered why not many of them flew. And it talks about the unconscious biases that we have as we are sort of doing some of these interviews, where there's a part of you that really wants this to work, and so you're sort of asking these questions in a leading manner where you're trying to reinforce the fact that, hey, the world really needs this thing that you have in mind. Right. And how to sort of subvert those biases and do these in a manner that and the reason it's called the mom test is it's kind of like most people want to be nice to you. They kind of like your mom, and you build something and you take it to your mom, and she'll try to be supportive and say, yeah, that's great, honey. So it's sort of like a way of doing these interviews in a manner where you actually get to know the real truth about, if you were to build this tomorrow, would this person actually buy it? Would they spend good money on it? Or is this something that they are just saying it's useful? And there's a series of tactical things that they mentioned, but I was really glad and lucky to come across that book at the right time. I would highly recommend it, especially for people like me who are builders first and, doing customer interviews doesn't come naturally to them. So the book really helped me.
Awesome. So the mom test, that's good to know. I feel like the real test is just the dad test. They'll tell you exactly how it is, right?
Yeah.
Cool. So Girish, let's dive deeper into your product. So we outlined kind of the main problem that you're solving, but are there other problems that you're solving right now or planning to solve for SaaS companies to help them, close more enterprise deals and become compliant?
So there are a couple of things that are happening in the universe. If you forget Sprinter for a moment and just look at what's really going on in SaaS. So there's two things that's really happening. One is that the number of SaaS companies in the world is just simply exploding, and that you and I, who sort of are in the space in SaaS, or anybody else like would really attest to that fact. And I was just looking at this graph the other day where somebody maintains like a list of all the SaaS companies in the marketing space, and about 10 years ago that number was about 300, and I think the same survey done about in 2022 is about 8,000, right? So there's like a massive explosion in just the number of companies in a narrow space like that, right? So we're all aware of this. So the number of SaaS companies is increasing. I think Anderson Horowitz famously said that software is eating the world, and my belief is that SaaS is eating software. So that's one massive wave that's going on. The second thing that's also happening is that the fraction of SaaS companies who are going to need some or more of these compliances or some sort of a security review is itself increasing. So it used to be about 10 years ago that you're selling to like a Fortune 500, you're doing an enterprise deal, and that's where you get asked for these things. But, like I was saying earlier, the floor for this is dropping all the time. And that's because of the inherent nature of these compliances. So if you look at a compliance like SOC 2, what ends up happening is that if a company is SOC 2 compliant, it needs to make sure that its critical vendors are SOC 2 compliant. Those in turn need to ensure that their critical vendors are SOC 2 compliant, and typically a SaaS company uses other SaaS companies. So this whole snowballing thing is going on as we speak. So as a result of this, we are seeing that the number of companies that go through some or the other sort of security review is just massively exploding. And you're sort of at the cusp of where both of these waves are happening simultaneously. The number of SaaS companies is increasing, and the fraction of SaaS companies who need this is also exploding simultaneously. Mm-hmm. And it's natural to expect that this would happen, because SaaS fundamentally means that my data is on your servers, and I would need some assurance that you're keeping this data safe and secure. That's natural to happen at some point or the other. Right. So the way we look at it is, Sprinto's job is to become like the trust currency for this cloud commerce world, where the data is going to transcend outside of your company's borders, and you will need some assurance that so the opposite person is keeping the data safe. Today, a large majority of it is taken care of in form of some security compliances like SOC 2 or ISO. Increasingly, every country and more states in the US, for example, are coming up with their own privacy laws. We have GDPR in the US, we have CCP in California. I think Canada has PIPEDA now, and every region is sort of coming up with their own privacy laws. And you need to start adhering with these kind of compliances as well. Increasingly, industries where if as a SaaS company you work with any sort of sensitive data, if it's healthcare data, you need to get something called as HIPAA. If you're dealing with credit card data, you need to get PCI compliant. If you're dealing with something else, then there are specific compliances related to industries. And so there's an explosion of these things happening. So the way we look at this at Sprinto is that we will increase the breadth of compliances that we support. So we already support about 15 compliances, and we're going to continue working on increasing that so that we can help our customers meet them wherever they need us in order to close their enterprise deals. But we also help our customers with other things which are a lot more painful. If you've been a SaaS company, an early stage SaaS company, especially, who has had to answer these massive security questionnaires, which can run into hundreds of questions, they are no fun. And I've been in those shoes, answering these. So we have something in the works that will help us solve these kind of things as well, and to sort of not just treat security as something that's an afterthought, but help you sort of deal with this upfront, especially for companies that cannot afford this today. You're an early stage SaaS company. Your primary thing that you're trying to do is to build your business, you win your customers. Yeah. You have absolutely no time, space, money to actually spend on anything else. And we get that. And our job is to try and automate this to a manner where it doesn't cost you as much and doesn't cost you both in terms of time and money as much as it otherwise would, and make this a lot more accessible to you, so that we sort of level the playing field. So it's not just something that like a $1 billion SaaS company can do. It's something that you can also do as a bootstrapped or an early stage SaaS company. And that's where our goal is to try and make this a very level playing field where you can compete on the basis of the features of your product, rather than some of these artificial barriers like, hey, my competition has SOC 2, but I don't.
Yeah. No, I love it. And I think like the timing is really good because I see it happening as well, right? Like like you're describing, like every country is putting out their own laws, all of these different kind of compliances based on different sectors. It's so important. And so, yeah, I really think you're solving a big problem. And I liked how you said that it's a trust currency, right? Like, I mean, I could vision a world where in the future, if you just say like, oh, okay, like, are you guys SOC 2? Are you guys this compliant? It's like, oh, don't worry, we have Sprinto. And they're like, oh, okay, cool. No problem. We got it. Like, we understand you're compliant then, right? And so that would be a cool future.
Yeah.
When you're going about growing your current company now, right? You obviously were very successful growing Recruiter Box. Is there kind of like a formula that you learned, like how you went about achieving that kind of growth that you're going to apply again here? Or do you feel like it's going to be a different approach here?
I think some of the principles are similar, but my previous company, Recruiter Box, was a bootstrap company. We grew it rather slowly, block by block, and there were many times where we had to do it linearly, in the sense that you do smaller experiments, make sure it works, and then that is when you can sort of pump in more resources into that section. Sprinto, on the other hand, has been a venture-funded company from day zero. So we've had more ambitious goals with our growth as a result. And we sort of operated differently in terms of the tactical things that would actually happen. So we have invested more ambitiously in certain things. And it also allowed us to do that a lot more earlier than I would do at Recruiter Box, because honestly, I was learning these things at the time, but now I'm a lot more confident, and some of these things have become muscle memory. So you can actually be confident and invest more in some of the things, like, let's say, whether that's SEO or marketing, right, or some of these other ways of actually growing your company. So you can actually start doing this a lot more confidently and without actually worrying about making it work on day zero. So you know how to make it work eventually at the end of the day. So definitely some differences on the ground in terms of how we operated the two companies. And it helps to have had some experience. Also lucky to have like a great team this time around. Back in Recruiter Box, because it was a bootstrap company, one of the things that happened was that pretty much every function inside of the company was something that the founders had to do themselves first before we could afford to hire anybody. Yeah. So as founders, we ended up writing code and then doing product management and design and marketing and sales, and you name it. We've done some part of that activity before we could actually hire someone to do it, and to know it well enough to you could tell somebody else what to do. Here we've been very lucky to have a team of prior SaaS founders who have sort of done the 0 to 10 kind of a journey, and and it really helps to build a team around them. And this combination of having people who are hands-on, but at the same time you can build teams around them, is pretty rare. And we've been lucky to have not one, not two, we have about 4 or 5 such people in the team now, and it really makes my job a lot easier as a founder.
That's incredible. Yeah, no, I totally relate to the bootstrapped thing. It's almost like every department, you're making like an MVP of each department and then hiring somebody, and then they take it and build out the rest of the department. But you have to create the MVP for each department.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
I couldn't have put it better. Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like.
Yeah, for sure. I wanted to actually, based on kind of like the timing right now as well, I wanted to get your take on something. Um, we're headed into a recession, right? The markets are obviously being affected. Startup funding, it's getting tougher and tougher to obtain. Inflation, interest rates, blah blah blah. How do you see that affecting the SaaS world? And if you'd like to share, then your business as well.
So I think there are small corrections that we would expect to happen in the market. Like the way I look at this, while I'm building a venture funded company, like my DNA is of that of a bootstrap founder. And to me, if anything, the last 2 years seem more like an aberration than the reality, because the time at which I was building the company, we were a bootstrap company, and we were sort of doing this in a manner that's efficient, and every dollar spent needs to have an ROI in it, and that's what we were sort of used to. So especially since the Fed printed like $1 trillion, the last 2 years have been like extremely crazy, and we were all looking at it, and I remember, and my co-founder used to often joke about, hey, are we doing something wrong, because the world seems to be doing these things very differently. So in a way, I'm not too worried about it personally for Sprinto. We have like a great business that's itself growing fast enough, and so we don't have concerns in terms of runway or anything of that sort specifically. So I'm not too worried about Sprinto. Specifically talking about the space, I don't think it would make massive differences to our market or SaaS itself. Like, of course, you're getting companies who are barely like a few $100K in revenue and getting $1 billion valuations. Those things are not going to happen. But in terms of reality of the SaaS commerce that actually happens, I don't think that's going away. It's not like companies were purchasing more SaaS products than they would otherwise do, or there was a massive inflation in something of that sort that was really happening. So I think the fundamentals of the SaaS economy in general are still solid. I don't anticipate too many things going wrong over there. The fact is still that SaaS is just a much better business model, both for consumers and for producers of business software, and that trend is going to continue happening. So I don't anticipate any major troubles for SaaS that way, except for the small tactical things, which is about fundraising and so on and so forth. But that apart, I think it's here to stay.
Fair enough. Thank you for sharing that. Now, as we wrap up, Girish, what is one piece of advice that you would like to share with early stage founders starting up?
I think I covered this a little earlier, but one of the things that I often tell myself about if I were to do another new startup right now is to sort of again spend more time in the problem space than the solution space. If you're like me, you're a builder. Your first instinct is go out and build something, and like I would like to curb that a little bit, because that's something that's muscle memory for you, and you can always do that, and to sort of get yourself in the uncomfortable place, which is where you've got to talk to real users and see whether your whatever it is that you're building actually has legs before you actually build it. Because a lot of things personally happen for me as soon as I start building out stuff. Like you get attached to it, you start wanting for it to be successful rather than worrying about whether it can be successful, and so on and so forth. So the lesson for me, and consequently for people like me, would be to try and validate your problem before you actually start building anything around it. Or even if you are building something, in order to validate the problem, make sure that you're telling yourself that, and it's like a conversation you're having with yourself that, hey, I don't know yet if this has legs. Let's figure it out. So that conversation is useful to have with yourself, with your early team members, because that sets the expectations right.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that, Girish. Now, if our listeners wanted to connect with you, where can they find you?
I'm Girish at sprinter.com. Just drop me a line. Happy to talk to any early stage SaaS founders and to share my notes about, how I can, how I went through some of the things, anything that you think I could be helpful with. Happy to share some time with you and share my notes with you. Also, if you have specifically any questions about how to navigate security related questions when you're sort of navigating an enterprise deal or anything of that sort, happy to answer those things as well. So feel free to drop me a line.
Great. Perfect. Thank you, Girish, for coming on the show.
Thank you so much, Shahim. Thanks for having me.